Welcome back, everybody. Derrick Sue, your East Oakland advocate. Well, thank you, everybody, for your birthday wishes. Today I turned 63. I never expected to get to this age because of the work that I did. And I say that in the sense that I never expected to have to deal with cancer. I didn't have to deal with age-related issues. So there are a lot of different things that I've been I'm personally going through right now. But I also uh, uh, knew what was going to happen when I reached certain milestones of age, and I'll explain what I mean by that. And um, I happen to be the son of um, a mother who had me very late in life. She had my half brother when she was 22, and then she had me just the month, not it was just barely over 30 days where she turned 38. So my mother was in a period of time, uh, the woman was not considered viable for making a family. And yet my father, he was still very young at the time, but he was created late in life also. He came from an extremely large family, and he was number 11, child number 11 out of 14. And so that he was uh, made very late in life also. And so it gave me an opportunity to watch aging at a very young age. So my on my father's side of the family, I watched both of my grandparents as they aged, and I was uh, very young. I wasn't even 12 years old yet before both of them passed away. And so I watched the medical issues with both of my grandparents on my father's side, and then the tragedy on my father's side with my grandmother on my father's side, where she was actually uh, killed by a drunk driver on New Year's Eve while she was en route back home. And so that was one of the sad things. But it delayed, or it actually relieved her of the suffering she was going through with some medical issues back then. And then my grandparents on my mother's side in the 70s uh, were at that same point. So here I am now in my teens and able to watch uh, the deterioration of uh, seniors' health, going from a very vibrant person, we'll say, to a person who is now bedridden and on the throes of death. And so, unfortunately, I lost both my grandparents by the time I was 26. My grandmother passed away in 1986. Um, and it was, and my birthday this time of the year is always very painful for me because of the really bad memories that I have associated around my birthday. And so a lot of folks say, well, why don't you get excited about it? Because historically it's been a very difficult time for me because uh, in on my birthday, February 10th, 1974, my grandfather, my best friend on my mother's side, who taught me, had me in martial arts lessons and learned, teaching me life. Um, he passed away on my birthday. I was 14 years old, and I was devastated. And it was a very difficult year, and life was very different for me at that point. Uh, but then I went through watching my grandmother go through deterioration of her health. And she was diagnosed with lung cancer in the just at the top of 81, I believe it was. And the doctors, after they had performed preliminary surgery on her lungs to see how extensive the cancer was, they came back and said she had 6 months to live, if that. And so we were all devastated, but my grandmother, she did fight the cancer. She did not take any cancer treatment. So I have to say that my grandmother resorted to herbal Chinese medicine to deal and cope with some of the issues that she was dealing with. And she lived very far beyond that 6 month time span. In fact, uh, she lived 5 years after that diagnosis. And she remained very active. She was going to the Chinese opera in San Francisco at the time, in the Chinese theater. She was seeing doctors, the Chinese doctors in San Francisco, until her medical care allowed her to transfer back into Alameda County. And that's where things really helped my grandmother for the better, and it did help extend her life. But this morning you probably saw on a picture on my Facebook page, and so I want to show you. So this is my maintenance life kit, and every senior is either has one currently or will be getting one, putting one together in the coming years. And how it typically starts out, so some real simple medications, and then you start carrying one of these. This is my third one. My first one was very small. Actually, it only held 2 pills, and that started in 2010. Actually, before that, I take that back. In 2010, I did start using a box, because up until that point, I was only on hypertension medication for my high blood pressure. And so I was on lisinopril for a number of years until my body changed. When my body metabolism and the body functions started changing, and then also it changed again when I had the cancer diagnoses and the cancer treatment of chemotherapy and radiation therapy. And one of the things that I want to let folks know, once you've gone through chemotherapy and cancer treatment, your life is never the same ever again. Because there's a lot of things that happen in chemo treatment, and a lot of folks say, well, how come you can't get back to doing what you do? I know people that have. Well, those are very few, far and few between, that actually get to go back to a normal life. Lance Armstrong is one of those that I know that was treat for testicular cancer, and he had a lot of chemicals go through his body, and then he still remained an athlete. That was some of the things that probably he shouldn't have done, and that's why he was stripped of all his medals. And so there are consequences to some of the things that we do. He was an incredible athlete for his time, and incredible with the bicycle, because before his doping charges and everything, I really rooted for him, because he was a cancer survivor. And like I said, having gone through all of that treatment, knowing the things that can happen, and knowing other people that have been through cancer treatment, it literally is a life-changing event. One of the things that I truly missed the most about that lifestyle change was losing the ability to ski. And along with that, because I lost so much feeling in my feet, I also stopped driving a car, and so that was something that was that really limited me uh, and my abilities for getting around, my mobility, how far I can go, the things that I can continue to do. So um, right now, because I have been very proactive in working on my health and restoring a lot of the things, taking my doctor's advice. I've been listening to my oncologist. I've been listening to my primary care doctors, and so these are some of the things that I've done to help restore feeling in my feet. I restored nearly 87, 88% of the feeling back into my hands and fingers. So that's been a big plus because now I'm not dropping things so much. And these are signs, that I saw with my grandparents from a very young age. On my father's side, uh, my grandmother was very sedentary. She wasn't able to move around a lot. She had a lot of mobility issues. My grandfather on my father's side, he worked up until he was in his almost on his deathbed, in his 70s, uh, and but he had the income, the only income for the family. So everything was very dependent upon him, even though the home was paid for. Uh, in another story on that home, city of Oakland, Alameda County, and state of California, eminent domain, that neighborhood where my grandparents lived. And I'm going to be bringing a video to you about the 980 highway corridor and approximately where my grandparents' home and yard used to be. I'm going to be talking about a project that can restore those neighborhoods back to Oakland and restore those 5,000 lost affordable housing units back into Oakland, and keep it in a way where uh, it will always remain affordable. And so, anyway, back to the health issues. I myself, because of my cancer treatment, and if you talk to cancer survivors, they're going to tell you, well, I can't really go too far because unless I'm with the same hospital system, the same healthcare system, you can't transfer. Uh, and it's really bad if you think about moving to another state because there are a lot of healthcare limitations that come into play and vary state to state. And in fact, in most cases, even though you have health care, if you are injured in your travel or in your vacation or while you're outside of California, your medical health care won't cover everything entirely. In fact, for myself, I had an injury. My insurance was for the state of California, but I had just moved back to North Carolina in my new home. It was in January, and I needed some medical attention. And then that's when I was alerted by the hospital that my medical from California was not valid. And I said, I know it is because I paid it. And she said, no, your California insurance stops at the California border. And so technically I was uninsured, but they would take care of my medical issue um, up to the limits of the state of North Carolina that would limit or get approved by my medical uh, uh, insurance carrier, which at that time was an HMO. That was actually with Kaiser medical system here in California. So, but there wasn't a Kaiser in North Carolina. And so, since it's not in uh, uh, insurance or in coverage hospital. I did have to pay a deductible, and they did cover the rest of the stuff that was agreed upon and also that was necessary. And then for me to seek further follow up, I had to go back to California to get the medical coverage. And that was the sole reason why in January I was here in California from North Carolina. And the moment I got back, that's when the devastating news came that that my financial institution went belly up. And so, but healthcare wise, you'll notice that seniors that have gone through cancer or very life-changing medical situations, a transplant of some form, or some major traumatic injury. These are all life-changing events that greatly reduce the mobility and also the ability for us to pick up and move somewhere else. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of the the ongoing medical needs, like myself, may not be covered by the next medical group in another state. And folks, some of the things are really important, such as your medications, like this. That's a life-sustaining medication, and that's for my high blood pressure. Then I have one for my diabetes, and then we have another one because my body also cannot collect potassium on its own. I have potassium pills that I have to take twice a day, and then that helps me from having some real serious issues. And then because of my age, doctors have always recommended once you reach 55 and older to add in calcium and magnesium. So I do, and there is, especially in the Asian population, the reduction of bone density. And so this helps with some of those issues. It may not resolve it, but every little bit that I can add in that doesn't cost a significant amount and that I'm willing to do could extend my life and my health that much longer. And then also a lot of folks are saying, well, why do you waste your money on vitamins? Well, doctor said, go ahead and take the vitamins. And so those are some of the things, some of the medications that I take. And it would be a far larger group if I had continued to do other medications, such as some of the pain medications that I have on standby should I ever need them. It's an open prescription. It never expires for certain pain medications for extreme pain. And thus far, I've been able to avoid those and use over-the-counter medications such as the naproxen sodium as a next best source. And so these are some of the things, some of the small things. But then also because I had the colon rectal cancer, and a lot of folks, you've heard about people pooping in a bag. Well, I'm one of those people that receives these, and I have to have a certain amount of those bags available at all times, and the resource is through my Alameda County Insurance Alliance, and so they pay for those maintenance bags. And if I leave Alameda County, it's not likely that another healthcare system or another county would pick up the cost on those bags that I would need for the rest of my life. And so I have to have a monthly supply, and then there's a, a pad that puts an absorbent, or not absorbent, an adhesive uh, onto the fixture, and then I apply it to my skin, and it stays affixed to my skin until I need to replace that that bag. And so these are things that I had issues with when I got into when I was arrested back in 2019. This was a major issue for Santa Rita Jail because number one, they didn't have the bags, and number two, they didn't have the adhesive that was needed. And so I was constantly having accidents there in the jail cell, and also on the transport when I was going between court in Oakland and back to Santa Rita for those few days. And so um, it, it became a real issue. And so if I don't have these bags, there could be a real um, biohazard uh, issue. And so these are some of the things that I have to take into consideration whenever I'm dealing with housing issues. A lot of people say, well, you need to move to somewhere that you can afford to pay. Well, I can't afford to not be without these things. These are life-sustaining medications and tools. And while they may be available elsewhere, I may end up having to pay for them, and then that decreases that area affordability if some of these things are even still available. So like I said, everything changes from border to border and from state to state, and it's an issue for a lot of folks. And if you notice, it's much, much more difficult to move an older person out of their home into assisted living, and and that's one of the reasons why, because a lot of things that are necessary for that individual to continue living is necessary and uh, is close at hand, so that their needs are met very quickly. Whereas in another area, that is less likely to happen or even be covered. And at my age, with some of the issues that I have, it could be shortening my life by years. And one of the sad things right now, I kind of consider myself almost walking dead, because here I am, 63, and it's historically documented that folks that have lived on the streets, homeless on the streets, for more than a year, can shorten or have their lives cut short by as little as 5 years and up to as high as 20 years. And so if you look at things right now, even taking the low end right now, I would be equivalent to at least a 68-year-old, if not older. Or my life expectancy, typical male life expectancy on both sides of my family, has not gone beyond 80 years. 80 years is the maximum for family members on my dad's side and on my mother's side. And then there's a lot of family members that didn't make it this far. I mean, a tremendous amount that started dying off literally at age 50. And at age 50, that symbol actually hit close to home, where a high school friend of mine, he passed away when he was only 50. And that was likely because he didn't deal with his health issues, such as high blood pressure, which is very common in the Asian culture. So, very important, folks, keep your health care up. I sat on the trustee board, co-applicant board, which oversaw healthcare for the underprivileged, the homeless, and the low income. And we made a lot of changes there. Yes, we were able to also implement a new uh, medical records transfer system called Epic. And so last year it was fully implemented throughout the state of California so that any hospital in the state of California can uh, tap in and get your records from any hospital or any medical source in the state of California in minutes rather than hours or days. So this was one of those projects that I helped oversee and make sure that it launched. And once it launched, I was even able to work and talk about the system because I was part of that system as a healthcare client. So I knew how it worked. I asked doctors, I talked to nurses and the staff about Epic, what they liked about it, what they didn't like about it. Then I was able to take that back to our co-applicant meetings, and we talked about Epic and the shortcomings and what needed to be addressed. And so that was an exciting time when I was sitting helping shape that. And that's some of the foundations for universal health care that's desperately needed. And the ability to access one's healthcare records in minutes. Excuse me, still got a little cough there. Anyway, I'm going to end this with saying, folks, don't worry about moving your older folks. I've seen on the early end where my relatives passed away, and by no fault of their own, other than having kids later in life, and I am a prodigy of that. My brother, my half brother, he was born in 1944. He passed away back in 2018 was when I was notified, uh, and so again, here's my half brother. He worked in similar type of circumstances with me. He was always armed, just like I am, and he did a lot. And mental health, uh, he didn't. He, that's a long story on his journey and his mental health situation. I wish I could have helped him, and he had contacted me back then, and we probably could have worked something out. But thanks for joining me today. This has been quite a journey talking about my health care and why I can't leave Alameda County. And when you get to a certain point, you have certain conditions that limit your mobility, such as myself. And then folks are constantly telling you, well, you need to do this, you need to do that, go back to work, get a job, move somewhere you can afford. Well, that's impossible because if I leave Alameda County, the likelihood of continuum of care for my health care is pretty much zero. And that's called pre-existing conditions. So think about that, folks. Thanks for joining me today. We'll be right back.